What is the purpose of a sequel? Is it to try and recapture the love for the first with the risk of repetition? Is it to take all the flaws of the original and improve upon them? Or is it to take things in a bold new direction, potentially alienating your fanbase? Many games will follow these archetypes, but only one truly embodies all the conventions of continuing a franchise. And that game is the one I'm looking at today. Welcome to the show where I look at games I didn't grow up with to determine if they still hold up today. Welcome to No-stalgia. Metal Gear Solid was the peak of cinematic storytelling on the original PlayStation, introducing incredible voice talent and impeccable attention to detail with an idiosyncratic atmosphere. Moving to the next generation of consoles meant that improvements were inevitable, and this game wastes no time making this abundantly clear.
The Hudson River, 2 years ago. We had classified intelligence that a new type of Metal Gear was scheduled for transport. The whole thing stank, but our noses had been out in the cold too long.
It opens with a shadowy figure walking across a path drenched in rain, smoking a cigarette. It is not long before he runs and dives off the GW bridge, landing on a ship like the bloody Terminator, revealing the coolest character in gaming history, Solid Snake. He's back, and I'm just so happy to see him. Do I even have to mention how much this has improved graphically over the predecessor? I mean, look, he actually has a face now. Solid Snake is working with Otacon, trying to take down another Metal Gear, as since the Shadow Moses incident, multiple superpowers have tried to make their own walking deathmobiles. It could be criticised that this upends the happy ending Snake had prior, though I'd argue that this is the perfect trajectory for Snake's character. Snake knows that killing is not only something that he's good at, but in a weird way, kind of enjoys.
I watched your face when you did it. It was filled with the joy of battle.
The last game's arc was about Snake and Otacon taking control of their lives, not following in the terrible deeds that their relatives had participated in.
I'm through regretting the past. Life isn't all about loss, you know. Snake, I'm a complete person now. I've found a reason to live.
Good. Don't die on me.
Same to you.
There was no way in which Snake nor Hal could sit by whilst the world falls into ruin. So now they are back, only this time on their own terms, without being tools to the government or anyone else. The influence that Grey Fox and Hal Emmerich have on Snake is profound, creating a man that is well aware of who he is, doing all he can to make an impact on the world.
I think it's time for me to look for a new path in life.
A new path?
A new purpose.
Will you find it?
I'll find it.
The world of Metal Gear Solid has been deeply expanded. Characters only mentioned prior make appearances, earlier events are referenced. Even being on a tanker in New York, as opposed to a small island off the coast of Alaska, gives this elevated, more grandiose scale, while still keeping Snake in an isolated location ideal for sneaking. The change in location also impacts the tone. Shadow Moses was dark, with cold winds and echoing corridors. You had a lone Snake that wasn't even equipped with a weapon or the knowledge of what the true motives of his team were.
The Pentagon's plan to use you was already successful in the torture room. Snake, you're the only one who doesn't know. Ah, poor fool.
In vast contrast, Snake is now completely in control, ready and equipped for action. Instead of the dread of having to combat impossible odds, it honestly feels like Snake is just completely in his element. Though it lacks the atmosphere of Shadow Moses, the tanker more than makes up for it by essentially being a playground to mess around with as you please. Metal Gear Solid is seen as one of the most influential stealth games of all time. which I find quite funny because it really doesn't feel like a stealth game. Sure, there are a few rooms where you can slip past some guards undetected, but firstly, taking out guards is about as awkward as accidentally casting your phone screen on your parents' TV, and secondly, most of the game is actually pretty action orientated, especially in the second half. Metal Gear Solid 2 takes steps to innovate in every single way. Guards are more intelligent, tracking you down in realistic search patterns based on real-life military maneuvers. There are way more than them than were ever on Shadow Moses, and their bodies actually stay on the floor this time, which can be found by other guards. Coinciding with this, the way in which Snake deals with them has been greatly expanded. Guards can be held up, freeze, reacting differently depending on where you shoot them. They might try and run away and call for backup, in which you can shoot their radio, disabling it. You can even drag bodies into lockers. This is an early PS2 game, and the attention to detail is immense. Physics have been added to the most minute things, like bottles, glass, sand. I highly recommend watching one of these videos that detail just all the insane things you can do in this game. Even some of the optional codec conversations you can have are hilarious.
This reminds me of when we first met.
I was the one inside the locker that time. We're equal now, huh?
Not unless I wet my pants.
That's a low blow, Snake.
I really can't state how much the PS2 is being pushed, while still hitting 60 frames per second. I mean, look at these rain effects, they're stunning. Even the character models are being used in the codec calls now. Though, can I say, the Yoji Shinkawa art style is far more distinctive. I mean, his art is just straight up stunning, and it's so synonymous with the series. During Snake's infiltration of the tanker, you get to gun down a pregnant woman, take some pictures and send them to Otacon.
Will you please stop sending me pictures of the Commandant?
All of this leads up to who else to spoil everyone's day but the gun-toting sussy bastard himself, Revolver Ocelot.
Gift of the silver tongue. They say it's the mark of a good officer. End of a liar.
I felt like Ocelot was one of the most underutilized characters, as not only was he the only villain to survive Shadow Moses, but he always ended up being overshadowed by Liquid Snake. But now that Liquid is dead, Ocelot can finally stand on his own.
It's been a while, brother.
So, I have all the questions. So, Liquid's spirit is trapped inside his arm, right? Which is now on Ocelot's body. But first, Ocelot lost his hand, not his arm, so I guess he had to amputate the rest for no reason. And second, how is somebody's spirit transferred from an arm to a person's brain, I guess? Right, hear me out. So what if Ocelot is just like wrangling a Solid Snake and then Liquid's personality like takes over? Would that make Ocelot like, would that make him gay?
I've been waiting for you, Solid Snake.
I love Ocelot, easily one of the most entertaining characters to watch whenever he's on screen. And though I'd say the same about Liquid, I really felt like his story was done. His purpose was to contrast Solid Snake. However, now that Snake has finished his character arc, it seems like Liquid is only back for fan service, and the fact that the game's creator Hideo Kojima clearly regrets killing him off. After pulling a classic Ocelot, he betrays everyone and blows up the tanker, escaping in Metal Gear Ray, as he wants to bring it to the Patriots, or as they're also known, the La Lulililala. And Metal Gear Ray is just the coolest design for a mech I have ever seen. With that, Snake seemingly drowns and the game cuts to 2 years later. Feeling like the start of a new game, Snake is now tasked by Colonel Campbell to infiltrate an oil rig to take out yet another group of terrorists.
This is Snake. I'm now inside Strut A of Shell 1.
That doesn't sound like Snake.
Just a precaution. You are now designated Raiden.
Who's Raiden?
The terrorists call themselves Sons of Liberty.
Sons of Liberty?
The name of their leader is Solid Snake.
The hero of Shadow Moses? So that's why you changed my code name.
Oh no! He looks like a pussy! Come on, this has gotta be temporary, right? Nope. From now until the end of the game, you will be playing as this guy. A plot twist that's only been done once since, and that went over just great. Raiden is kind of like a mix of Meryl's naivety with Snake's previous position of being drip-fed orders, blindly following them.
Shoot him! What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Shoot!
Don't talk to me like a rookie.
I'm telling you, shoot!
He is also, might I add, a little bitch.
It's like being in a nightmare you can't wake up from.
You start off with the guards already being taken out by Snake, and you come across the first boss. Snake has to save you. The next boss, you just have to carry in a corner until you kill one, accidentally, except he's not dead. Jack couldn't even do that. Not to mention that Snake basically at every opportunity will call you an amateur who just plays video games and doesn't know what he's doing.
VR, huh?
But realistic in every way.
A virtual grunt of the digital age, that's just great.
You play him through the tanker, just like, yeah, I'm Snake, I'm a badass. And then the game says, no, you're not Snake, you're not cool, you're not charming, you're just a whiny weeb who plays video games and jacks it to anime. Oh my god, it's just like me. If it wasn't obvious, Raiden is supposed to be a self-insert for the player. No, you're not as capable as Snake, but you can get there. As Raiden gets better, so do you, the player. I feel like you really bond with him in a way that you didn't do with Snake, and as he's proving himself more capable, you really start to like the guy, though that can't be said for his allies. Other than Snake, his other main radio contacts are Colonel Campbell and Raiden's girlfriend Rose. Campbell comes across as cold, even dismissive of Snake's existence. He really lacks the emotional depth of the previous game, and his performance even seems a little robotic.
I'm gonna save Meryl no matter what it takes.
Okay, thanks. Even if that is Snake, that has no bearing on your mission.
Now Rose, I really can't stand her. Raiden is facing death at every corner, and all Rose can do is go, what day is it tomorrow? What day is it tomorrow? Look, sweetheart, Jack and my boy's gotta save the world. Stop making every conversation about your fucking relationship.
Listen, Rose, I'm right in the middle of a mission and
Why? Why can't you relax when you're with me?
Look, the mission,
Why don't you open up to me?
You're here to save my game, and that is it. I was really surprised of how little I ended up saving in the end, because I never got sent back that far upon failing, but that doesn't mean that the gameplay was never frustrating. Unlike the tanker that was one big interconnected area with tons of room for strategy, the plant is better described as single rooms known as struts, stitched together being tackled in a fairly linear fashion. There is also tons of backtracking, and it's not the fun kind. I'd say the best way to describe it is the tanker is more like a Metroidvania, where everything feels like it loops back around, whereas the plant is more like getting the PAL cards in Metal Gear Solid 1, where it almost feels like you're just walking backwards and forwards in a straight line. And I even felt that the aesthetics and overall design felt extremely rudimentary. Of course there needs to be a certain amount of cohesion in order to not appear jarring, but I feel that Shadow Moses, whilst also being limited to one location, did far more to keep its rooms distinctive. Just look at the contrast between the cold outside to the blistering hot furnace room, the furnace room looking nothing like any of the other rooms in the game, or the variation in the verticality from the huge towers to your cramped corridors. Most areas in Metal Gear Solid 2 don't seem to leave a big impression, with the exception being the final area due to its novel visuals. Even gameplay wise, I found the stealth archaic when I was in the struts, feeling nowhere near as satisfying as when I was making my way through the tanker section. For starters, the Soliton radar really becomes an issue. In both this and the previous game, the radar is a crutch for the player to see the enemies, mainly due to your lack of visibility directly in front of you. You could go into first person mode, but seeing as you can't move when you're in first person, it can be very tedious scoping out a room. So if the radar is a crutch, well why not just use it then? This is the problem. Well, the radar doesn't actually show up until you interact with these computer terminals called nodes.
Did you say nerd?
Not nerd, node.
Oh.
Unfortunately, playing without the radar is only ever irritating because it's almost like the game wasn't built around it. I understand that not having the radar is supposed to be a challenge, but if the game is designed with having the radar constantly active in mind, then taking that away just completely ruins the experience. I'd love to say that the camera only affects the stealth, but it also can make some of the boss fights irritating for sure. You are battling the members of Dead Cell, this game's equivalent of Foxhound. There are 4 members. Fortune, a woman who can't be hit by bullets despite really wanting to die.
Why am I the only one that can't die?
She can also summon saxophones. You've got a vampire called Vamp.
So that's why they call him Vamp.
No, Vamp isn't for vampire, it's because he's bisexual.
Can somebody actually explain this to me? I genuinely don't understand. We also have Fat Man, maybe the most ridiculous boss in the series. Olga is a character who's helping Dead Cell with an ulterior motive. See, she's secretly working for the Honolulu Laniloli, i.e. the Patriots, and she is surprisingly capable, proving that she's really good with a blade, unless it's a razor. And finally, Solidus Snake, because Gas Snake was probably too silly. He's the 3rd clone of the legendary soldier Big Boss. I find Solidus an incredibly well written character, for reasons I'll further expand on later. Unfortunately, the rest of these antagonists never left much of an impression on me. There was very little time spent with the members of Foxhound, yet I still found myself taken aback by the deaths of Psycho Mantis and Sniper Wolf. With fewer bosses, you'd assume that there would be a lot more room for development, but I couldn't help but find them all one-dimensional in comparison. The boss fights themselves, I can say, do improve on their predecessor. Visibility from the camera can cause issues in a cramped room when you're up against Vamp, but up against Fat Man, where you've got a great open space, it works fantastic. What I cannot complain about, however, is that boss music. The composer Norihiko Hibino did a fantastic job at crafting the bulk of the music for this game. I wouldn't say that most of it is the kind of thing I'd listen to in my spare time, and I'd say that I prefer the first game's soundtrack, but there are definitely some great songs for sneaking. My favourite track is probably the main theme, from movie composer Harry Gregson Williams, who did some of the cutscene music but wonderfully enhanced the cinematic spirit that is core to the series. The cutscenes in this game are numerous. I mean, the series is infamous for being mostly dialogue, and there is a lot. Maybe too much. I mean, after the tanker section, did I really have to get beaten over the head with tutorials as Raiden, despite having already played the game for like 2 hours at this point? A lot of the conversations take place in the codec, even if characters are standing right next to each other, which is just not visually interesting at all. For example, you shoot a Nikita missile to get past an electric floor, and there's a brief cutscene with the president.
I'm prepared to face the consequences of my betrayal.
What are you... What the...
You're a man?
Whoa! I get that this is funny, but what if Raiden was a woman? The leader of a free world would have just tried to snatch some snatch.
Grab him by the pussy.
After the sexual assault, you're sent straight into a codec conversation about how everything, including the government, is controlled by the ooh la la voulez-vous, I mean the Patriots. A conversation like this in the previous game would have been done in a cutscene. I understand that there are budgetary restrictions, but if your conversations are so long you have to cut corners, maybe your conversations are too long. Probably the most egregious example of this, and easily the worst part of the game, is when you're dealing with yet another Emmerich pissing themselves in a locker, Otacon's stepsister, Emma. Now, picture in your head the worst gameplay mechanics you can think of. Underwater sections maybe, escort missions probably, no doubt some kind of mission where you have to babysit someone else's health bar. When you're with Emma, you have to do all of these. She is scared of bugs, she's scared of water, she's scared of heights, and it is just a drain on my sanity.
No! I hate water!
I've got Emma Emmerich here. We've managed to avoid drowning.
I mean, does this look particularly fun? Especially when I've got guards to worry about as well. And to make matters worse, when all of this is done, Emma is saved, she bloody dies anyway. Then, just when I thought I didn't have any more reason not to like her, her final conversation with her brother gives me big incest vibes, sounding like a very perverted fanfic.
It's like one of my Japanese animes.
Emma's death is important though, as it shows just how close Snake and Otacon are now.
How?
EE? Damn!
Otacon, try to get as many hostages out as you can. It's a short flight to the shore, so don't worry about overloading the Kamov.
Leave it to me.
I repeat, personnel in the upper levels, head for the evacuation area.
The whole section with Emma is absolutely terrible. But from now until the end of the game, what happens is nothing short of outstanding. In this final act, everything that you think you know gets completely deconstructed. The first of many bombshells is dropped on the player. Raiden is not a rookie and a blank slate that you thought he was. He's actually a child soldier, raised by Solidus to become a hardened killer. This creates a shift in his character. You were told that you weren't Snake, you were Raiden, but you always wanted to be Snake. And as you've gotten better, you start to become more and more like him. But now things are changing. Raiden now has his own backstory. Snake will later give him a sword and remark that he doesn't like blades himself, and the dog tags that you probably typed your own name into get discarded. He's finally at the end of the game crafting his own identity. And now that you're starting to enjoy playing as Raiden, the game is telling you, no, you're not Snake or Raiden. You've got to get your own individuality and pass on your own knowledge and your own ideals. That really, at its core, is what this game is about. People longing to make a difference, and in a way, Snake succeeds in passing on what he knows onto Raiden, even quoting what Grey Fox passed on to him.
There's something my best friend said to me once. We're not tools of the government or anyone else. Fighting was the only thing I was good at, but at least I always fought for what I believed in.
The biggest opposition to these ideals are the Patriots, who aim to control information, deciding who gets to be elected, what gets to be popular. It's all terrifying in the sense that you kind of start to believe it with how much of our information is filtered through the news, with more and more things being censored as time goes on.
The untested truths, spun by different interests, continue to churn and accumulate in the sandbox of political correctness and value systems.
Everyone withdraws into their own small gated community, afraid of a larger forum. They stay inside their little ponds, leaking whatever truth suits them into the growing cesspool of society at large.
The different cardinal truths neither clash nor mesh. No one is invalidated, but nobody is right.
Taking down the Patriots would seem like the heroic thing to do, yet their biggest threat is actually Solidus. He has done some terrible things, but is he really wrong? In fact, you're the one doing the Patriots' bidding. They want you to kill Solidus, and the thing is, you don't have a choice. Neither you or Raiden. This isn't the kind of game where you can change the outcome of the ending, and Raiden has been told that if he decides not to act, the real Rose and Olga's child will be killed. So in a way, you do lose. And no matter what happens, the Patriots will continue to control everyone's lives. That final battle though, it's pretty sick. Not gonna lie, the sword is a blast. There are actual patterns to get down, really testing your skill, whilst being in an open area where the camera complements the action. Most boss fights were a little monotonous to me, but this one is pretty solid. Do you know what's not solid though? That Metal Gear.
Not happy about that? Get over it.
That's going a bit too
Any
far.
effects of
Stinger missiles were useless on Rex, unless its radome was destroyed. It was made very apparent just how indestructible and menacing this thing was. Ray, which is supposed to be more powerful than Rex, Raiden, yes this Raiden, tears through up to 20 of them depending on what difficulty you're on. These things go down so easy, being more of a nuisance than walking harbingers of death. One of the few benefits of not playing as Snake is seeing him work alongside the player. Unlike AI companions in other games that do barely anything, it really does elevate him to legendary status, if he hadn't already proven himself in Metal Gear Solid 1.
That takes care of the cremation.
You might have noticed all the similarities to the first Metal Gear Solid. This is something that factors into the plot. See, Raiden is being tested to see if he can become like Snake for events intended to parallel the Shadow Moses incident. This is testing the whole genetic versus environmental debate that's been going on for years. Now, from a conceptual standpoint, this is very nuanced, smart stuff, but from an actual playing the game standpoint, the similarities kind of rob MGS2 of its own identity a little bit, because the most memorable stuff is all the new stuff. I mean, it is very much impossible to forget all the weird shit that the AI Colonel Campbell starts spitting out when he's glitching.
I hear it's amazing when the famous purple stuffed worm in Flapjaw Space with the tuning fork does a raw blink on Harry Carey Rock. I need scissors. 61.
Probably one of my favourite moments in the game is actually the final speech that Snake has at the end. In a world where the past is being censored, the message of this game rings truer now than ever. Yes, humanity has done terrible, unforgivable things, but pretending that it didn't happen will only doom us to repeat ourselves.
We need to pass the torch and let our children read our messy and sad history by its light. We have all the magic of the digital age to do that with. The human race will probably come to an end sometime, and new species may rule over this planet. Earth may not be forever, but we still have the responsibility to leave what traces of life we can. Building the future and keeping the past alive are one and the same thing.
I never grew up playing Metal Gear Solid 2, but I can definitely recommend it, faults and all. It's not my favourite in the series, hell I even prefer the first one, but it might be the most important. Its warnings about technology ring truer more now than ever, and the message of leaving the world behind in a better place for the next generation is something that I very much intend on doing myself, even if it's just giving you, the viewer, some respite from this big scary world that we live in. If you think I've earned it, please subscribe, and as for me, I'm gonna go and keep searching for the gold in the old.